Here we are at 208 North Crescent Drive in Beverly Hills, and I'm in the home of Elinor Quinlan, whose father was one of the early pioneers of Beverly Hills. And it's just wonderful to meet Elinor because she has a lot of the memories of the stories of those early days when she was growing up in Beverly Hills as a young girl. And she actually had collected and kept some of the items from those days from the family, pictures and wonderful clippings and actual whole newspapers of the Beverly Hills Citizen. So what we're going to do is we're going to hear a little bit about her and when she came to Beverly Hills and about the family a little bit, and then we'll go into some of the artifacts that she had collected. Elinor, how are you? And
okay.
and just give us an overview, what you would like to say about the history of the family and your father and all that.
Well, our family came here in December 1919. They landed in Southern California, not knowing where they were going to settle, but they stayed at a hotel downtown Los Angeles. And one day my father decided to go out and browse around a little bit and get familiar with Los Angeles itself. He went down near Pershing Square, and there were several buses, promotional buses, going to different areas. He had worked for the American Brake Shoe and Foundry Company in the East before they came out here. And one time, this company sent him to Beverly, Massachusetts, where Burton Green originally came from. So he got on the bus and came out here to Beverly, and he was pointed out to him there was a vine-covered public garage for lease. He was attracted by that because it was the only business on Wilshire Boulevard between Sawtell and Fairfax Avenue. So he thought that, people have to get gasoline on their way to the different areas. And they signed a lease and moved out here right immediately. We were living in an apartment building on Rodeo Drive, where Chanel's building is now. And of course, the garage drew the locals down to the area because a lot of the people, they had 3 or 4 cars, but they only had 1 car space on their property. So they would bring their extra cars down to the Beverly garage and store them every night. The race car, or the racing season, when it was open, the drivers used to bring their cars into my father's garage to be serviced, and saw there was a big opportunity to make money in real estate. So he got he became a broker. In front of the front area of the garage, office, a real estate office. Sometimes my father would sell the fire department 2 gallons of gas, or maybe a battery, or maybe a couple of tires or something like that. He had everybody coming to the garage. And sometimes he would gather the news from people who would come in to my dad's garage, and they'd tell him about something that was very newsy. And so he wrote it up, would send the sheet downtown Los Angeles, have it printed and brought back to his place, and then that was the first throwaway paper in Beverly Hills. He was the second real estate broker.
Mm-hmm. When about 1921 or so, when he was getting going, where did you live?
Oh, then we lived in a bungalow court in the 200 block on Wilshire. And there was a beautiful bungalow court on Rodeo Drive. On Rodeo Drive, there was a 2-story house that Mr. Cook owned. His children, we went to school together. We're in a picture there of a kindergarten class at Hawthorne.
And there she is right there.
I am up there.
She's wearing a little page boy hairdo.
Oh yes, I had straight hair.
Okay.
And I always had beads around my neck or something.
You were like a little gypsy girl. Which makes Elinor really one of the true pioneers still around. What year did you go to Hawthorne? How old were you, in other words?
Let's see, I think I was 5.
Okay.
Well, I just stayed there. Then Beverly Vista was built shortly after that. And I went into the 1st grade at Beverly Vista.
What year were you born?
What year?
Yes.
1920.
Oh, you were born in 20.
Uh-huh.
Oh, so he arrived in 1919 first,
Yeah.
and then settled in, and then the family started.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Uh,
So then, after you lived in the bungalow court, then where did you go? Where your family go?
we came here to this house.
To this house.
What happened was my mother and my sister and I drove across the country. My sister did all the driving. She was only 16 years old, I think, at that time. And my father had shown her how she could clean the spark plugs and all that. And this is my sister in front of the garage. She used to go horseback riding. When we came coast, after our visit there, everything had started to change around here. It just went like a balloon, you know. And it, because east of Crescent Drive, there was nothing but just fields here.
Yeah.
And then they started subdividing this area all the way down to Doheny. And the contractor that built a lot of the homes in this area, he built this one for himself. But after he finished it, my father came over and looked at it, and he talked him into selling it to him instead. Because before that, there weren't any roads going through like Maple and Palm.
Hobart Bosworth, while he was building his house on Sunset up there in 26, I think it was, he lived on a little house right on Doheny Drive in 24. He had a little stable for his horse.
Oh yeah,
and there's
I used
pictures
to
of him
see him going on his
on
white
his
horse.
white horse. But it's amazing your family kept this house. Why is that? How did that
Well,
happen?
the reason my dad was drawn to it was because it was close to the office, and he didn't drive. He had given up driving way back. He didn't like driving. So my mother always did the driving to take him with the clients. He could sit in the back seat and talk to them about a deal. Another thing was at nighttime, a lot of evenings, he would go back to the office. People would be going into the theater, and some of them were famous people, and they'd come in and they'd say, "Mr. Quinlan, do you have anything interesting that I might be interested in?" And he'd tell them about a certain lot on Wilshire or whatever, and he'd give them a deposit check, and they'd say, we'll see you when we come out of the theater. When they came out of the theater, he had the deal all tied up. They had a piece of property.
Actually, the theater was the idea of it. How did that all come about to have
theater?
a theater building and all of this?
Well, actually, the Gore brothers, I think they approached my father, and because he owned that big piece of property there, and they thought it would be a great place for a theater. So of course my father didn't know anything about doing that, so he turned that part over to them.
And how did Fred Niblo fit into all this?
Well, he was a good client of my dad's.
Investor? Fred Niblo was a film director over at Metro and then MGM Studios. He's the one that directed the chariot race scenes for Ben-Hur in 1924, 5 and 6. But he was also a Beverly Hills pioneer. He's involved with the Chamber of Commerce with Doug and Mary in promoting Beverly Hills as a place where people would come and live. The reason they needed a theater, all films were shown at the Beverly Hills Hotel, in the Beverly Hills Hotel screening room there, and that's not adequate. It was in the hotel.
They used to have the church services there.
Yes,
at the
Boy
Beverly
Scout
Hills.
meetings. I mean, it was the Civic Center. It was in 1923 that it all started.
Started, yes.
And was being built in 24, was it?
24, that's right. A friend of mine, one time, he called me, he said, I want to show you something. So we drove over to a pizza parlor. And this is the original organ that used to be in the theater. It had on the parts of the organ in the back, it had Quinlan Theater Building. His mother and father both came from Ireland. My grandfather came over when he was just a young boy. The mother had died, and the father brought him and his sister over here. And on the way, their father died at sea, so they had to bury him at sea. Okay.
Here's the wonderful Beverly Hills Citizen, which is dated May 14th, 1925. Saul Lesser was not only a theater impresario, he was a production impresario, was a distributor, Saul did everything, and was one of the youngest distributors in San Francisco area. And you can see the picture of the theater building, which was in this West Indian design.
Oh, it just grew overnight.
Among our clients in this city we have Stanley Anderson, that's Robbie Anderson's grandfather. We have George Holman, F.W. Bullock, Tom Skiles, Cliff Durant, who is a well-known writer, Beverly Vista School. Oh, Tony Gaudio is here. Tony Gaudio was a famous cameraman in the movie industry. And Norma Talmadge. A beautiful home for Norma Talmadge. See, always a connection to the film industry. This is May 14th, 1925. Blurb here with a photograph of a home. What we have, Mabel Normand, the famous Max Sennett comedian, buys the Heegard home. So it was the movie people that really was movers and shakers, along with the real estate people.
Well, that's it. They were going to combine because my father had a lot of show business people. And they trusted him, you know, anything.
Well, I hear they left a deposit check, like, find me something.
These are listings of properties on Wilshire Boulevard back in 1924. Northeast corner of Wilshire and Brighton Way. They were selling it for $21,000. 1924. Here's another one that was northwest corner of Rodeo and Wilshire.
Are these very big?
That was 30,000. Cash down 15,000.
How big are the lots?
60 by 86.
So in other words, this is extremely expensive for those days.
Oh, yeah.
But the reason it is that you can tell the confidence that the Burton Green and all the rest of them had. This was going to be an important place.
That's right.
$375 per.
Described it like a lot 3, block 9.
Well, you know, it's leading up to the crash of 1929. It's true. There were inflated everything in real estate. What happened to your father in the crash? What happened to him?
He was property poor. Because he went in with so many of his clients on deals that you know, he was just spread out thin. And it was
banking, bank money that backed them.
Oh yes, and there were these savings and loans. So many of those in Beverly Hills.
So they collapsed.
Of course, whenever a bank opened in Beverly Hills, I always rushed to be the first depositor because I get my picture in the paper. I have a photograph someplace that says "Little Elinor Quinlan," and here I am standing at the counter. I mentioned it at my dad's office, and he had some clients that like to hang around often, very wealthy people, and. I'd say something about, I'm going to be there tomorrow morning for the opening of the bank. I'm going to be the first one. So they would give me $10 gold pieces, $20 gold pieces, and I'd go like a chump. I'd go and deposit it. Let's see, the lot north of Sunset Boulevard on the east side of Beverly Drive. That was for sale for $12,000.
Right, it's 85 by 221 feet. North of Sunset, near Beverly Drive.
Bedford and Dayton Way.
The lot net size is 75 by 175 feet to an alleyway.
And the price was $4,500.
Oh, that's a cheap one.
West side of Pruce Road. Now Pruce Road is now Robertson.
Right.
The price was $4,785. Mr. Pruce owned all the property. He owned a big ranch south of Pico, but the street was named after him, from Culver City up to West Hollywood, which is West Hollywood now. West Hollywood used to be Sherman.
Sherman, California, or West Hollywood today, was the service town for Beverly Hills, meaning that everyone, if they needed hardware, they needed things to do on their homes, they went to West Hollywood. That's where all these shops were, and craftsmen, everybody were located there. They even had bottled water plant there. The streetcars and railroad were there, both, and they would run right through Beverly Hills. And both freight and red car, and Beverly Hills had their own little station.
And then the one line came up Santa Monica Boulevard, and it went down into Los Angeles, but at Crescent Heights, it bared off and went in back of all the little homes there over to Hollywood Boulevard.
The Gardner line. You went up the Gardner line.
Line, exactly.
And it was a diagonal line. And is this ledger have anything?
Most of the people would charge things, and then my father kept this ledger of the charge. For instance, Mrs. Fred Niblo was Enid Bennett. She was a
Right, the actress.
very well-known actress at that time. And she used to get, like here, she'd get 10 gallons of gas, which was $2.50.
And I noticed the bill here. We have a bill.
Oh, yeah. And
Look at that. They're one of the original bills from the garage from the 20s. Storage of cars or something?
yeah, see, they stored some of their
Yeah, they
cars
stored
there.
cars there. And so it's like $38 for the month to store your car.
One evening, I was at the garage, and I had gone around letting the air out of the tires. And my father spent most of the night with the hand pump then.
Oh my God. These are his garage
This
envelopes
concludes
here.
the first part of Marc Wanamaker's interview with Elinor Quinlan. Tune in again anytime on the same channel for part 2.